When you don't
Yeah,
have a good system or process, you don't really know where to plug the hole. It's like, well, we know
exactly.
it's not working, but we don't know what's not working, right? We don't know where
Yeah.
things are falling off. And so I think that's just kind of always been how I've approached things. I think it's part of the way I'm wired. And then I have found that I love coming into a little bit of a mess and
Cleaning it
cleaning
up.
it up and kind of
Mhm.
giving it some structure and foundation in a way that we can then go, okay, now we've gotten rid of all the clutter. Let's figure out how to build from there.
Today we have Amber Hamilton on the pod with us. Amber is the co-founder and CEO at Redwood Rise Ventures, a Virginia Beach-based advisory firm that empowers startup founders to succeed by providing mentorship, guidance, and resources to help them navigate the challenges of scaling their businesses and transitioning into operational leadership roles. She has a ton of experience in developing sales systems that help startups ramp up their sales teams as quickly and efficiently as possible. And that's why I'm excited to have Amber join us today to dive deep into her sales philosophy and unpack some principles that you can apply in your business and career. So, without further ado, get ready for episode 21 of the Systematic Selling Podcast. Amber, welcome to the pod.
Thank you so much for having me. Really am excited. I love
Awesome.
that
Well,
intro too. That can I get a copy of that? I'm gonna put that somewhere.
you bet. So I take it we didn't miss much on the intro. Anything you want to add or clarify?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Well, I'm curious, did you grow up in Virginia Beach or where
Hmm.
was home originally for you?
I did not. I actually grew
Yeah.
up in Baltimore, Maryland,
Oh,
right outside of Baltimore in Towson.
yeah.
Yeah, I made my way to Virginia Beach. I went to school in Newport News, Virginia at Christopher Newport University, which is a
Yeah.
little university here, and then, ended up making my way down to the beach about 10 years ago. So went back to Baltimore, lived there for about 10 years, and then moved back down here. So and now I live
What
8 blocks from the beach and I can't complain.
Oh, my
I
goodness. Yeah.
know.
That is great. I know before we talked, you talked about your son going out surfing, and I'm thinking,
Yeah.
wait a minute, he just
Yeah.
walked out there. That's great.
Yeah.
Now, what did you study in school?
Oh, I made the choice that every 18-year-old makes when they're trying to decide what they want to do for the rest of their
Yeah.
life. And I picked a solid degree in communication studies. So, yeah, I did communication studies and then I minored actually in leadership. One of the things that drew me to
That's
Christopher
awesome.
Newport was they had a leadership program. And so I actually minored in leadership.
Now, communication studies, what did
Mm-hmm.
that entail? I mean, I was an English lit major, so maybe that's
Yeah.
communication studies adjacent, but what
Yeah.
what what was the focus of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of it, if I had known or really gone beyond just my bachelor's degree, industrial organizational psychology would have been the next
Mm,
step of that. So
yeah,
IO Psych, which is kind of the sister to your MBA. It's a lot more of how these systems and how the internal workings of, companies or kind of the interpersonal part of it
yeah,
impacts organizations, and how to do that better. So you've got your MBA business mindset, which is the system itself, right? And
right.
then IO Psych kind of comes in and says, how do people mesh with that? I took classes like gender studies and kind of the deeper levels of communication and
Yeah,
how systems impact that. So, which sounds really fancy. It was a lot of, I took public speaking and it
yeah.
wasn't mass communications like the marketing side. It was much more the interpersonal communication side of things.
Now, when you chose that major, what were you envisioning at the time that you wanted to do?
Mhm.
18-year-old Amber going, here's
Yeah.
what I want to do when I graduate. What was that?
Yeah, that's actually, yeah. So, gosh, I really had no idea.
Oh,
I grew up, my parents were on staff with a faith-based organization. And
yeah.
so a little bit, I kind of assumed I'd go into the family business and do that. I tried that for about a year, hated it.
Was it like a campus crusade for
Yeah, it was
Christ?
Young
Or
Life. So
okay,
Young
yeah,
Life
I'm
is,
familiar
yeah, my
with that.
parents are, and still, they still to this day are involved in that. And my
Yeah,
brother's on staff with Young Life. And so I thought I'd go into it. One for me. And then
I'm
I
a
thought,
former seminary student, so
yeah, so you get it. Yeah, you're kind of
yeah,
like, oh, I'll just go into the family business.
yeah,
And it just wasn't, it wasn't for me. And then I got married and
mm,
had started having kids. So I thought I just was going to do the mom thing and be a stay-at-home mom and tried that for a little bit too. Also wasn't for me. I love being a mom. I have four boys. I absolutely love being a mom, but it just was being a stay-at-home mom wasn't for me. And
yeah,
so and even when I was a stay-at-home mom, I did a lot in event planning, sales. I would do, little part-time things here and there, helped get a Chick-fil-A, going in Baltimore, little kind of those jobs. And then when I was about ready to go, when I could see the writing on the wall and I knew my marriage was ending, I decided to go back to work full time
yeah.
and ended up managing three high-end bridal and gown stores here in the Virginia Beach area and loved it. Loved the
Wow.
leadership, loved the sales side of it. I can tell you more about the past 7 or 8 years of my career,
Yeah.
but graduating from college, I really had no idea what I wanted to do. I kind of, again, I assumed I would just go into the family business and be a mom and just kind of do that. But my life has been anything but linear when it comes to career.
Well,
So, yeah.
something that struck me when you were talking about
Mhm.
your degree experience was the aspect of IO psych and
Mhm.
the application of systems
Mhm.
within businesses.
Mhm.
Is that something that you have that even though at the time you didn't know how you would use it, is it
Mhm.
something that has at least laid a bit of a foundation for what you've been doing in terms of with your current
Yeah.
business and also when you were teaching sales systems?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know that I've ever thought about it like that. One of the things that I know as I look back on my life and my career is that can see kind of one of my superpowers is I can see what the system should be or
Mhm.
how the process should kind of flow. And
Yeah.
so I happen to, throughout my career, even when I would come in and do part-time work and it happened to be in early stage companies or companies that were at a point of where they were like, we don't know, we need to grow. Like they were kind of at this critical juncture.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I could see very quickly like what the process was that we needed to put in place for things to at least be streamlined so we could make them more efficient or we could at least see where some of the problems were. When you don't
Yeah.
have a good system or process, you don't really know where to plug the hole. It's like, well, we know
Exactly.
it's not working, but we don't know what's not working, right? We don't know where
Yeah.
things are falling off. And so I think that's just kind of always been how I've approached things. I think it's part of the way I'm wired. And then I have found that I love coming into a little bit of a mess and
Cleaning it
cleaning
up.
it up and kind of
Mhm.
giving it some structure and foundation in a way that we can then go, okay, now we've gotten rid of all the clutter. Let's figure out how to build from there. Yeah.
I'm curious on your when you started with the high end bridal
Mhm.
companies, what attracted you to that?
Mhm.
And uh, what exactly was your role and how did you build upon it?
Yeah. So I had done some of it was where I had experience. I had worked
Mm.
in the events and wedding industry. I managed a really high-end venue in Baltimore. And so I had some experience. And it's hard when you've had a gap in your resume to go back
Yeah.
to work. You kind of have to go where people are hire you. But the stores were under new management or new ownership.
Hmm.
I was hired to be the general manager. So I oversaw the three. At the time, we had two storefronts. And by the time I left, we had three storefronts.
Yeah.
And so we pulled one out and gave it its own brand. So I was a general manager there, and it was my job to build the sales team, to teach them. They had really high turnover, and retail in general tends to have high turnover, but in wedding gown sales, the industry is very interesting where the longer you can keep a sales associate, I mean, anytime in any sort of sales, the longer you can keep someone, the higher their closing ratio will be.
100%. Yeah.
But the really key thing was, I mean, these stores in particular had extremely high turnover. They really could not keep staff. And so my role there was to build a team that was successful, as well as figure out again how are we operating with the goal and vision of being the premier go-to
Hmm.
bridal student, kind of the Kleinfelds of, and so how do we build that up? And we really did a phenomenal job. I'm really proud of the work we did. Since I left there right during COVID because the
Yeah.
wedding industry took a hit. And so
Yeah.
it was a good time for me to make a shift. But I love working with people, especially in the fun part for me was, it's such a fun stage of life. When you're
Yeah.
wedding dress shopping, that's exciting,
Hmm.
so or it should be. And
Yeah.
so it was really fun to be part of those. And even in the wedding planning process, that part's really fun. You haven't gotten into the like super stressful part quite yet. So
Right.
you get people in this like really fun piece of that process, and you get to share in that excitement with them and kind of pick this gown that is the thing. So I just really enjoyed that part, but getting to build a team, and we did successfully. We were able to keep sales associates. There's still sales associates that I hired in 2020 that are still there. So, which is a really big deal,
If
especially in retail. Hmm.
in any industry, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
What if you were to drill down in terms of the change that you made when you were with them that enabled them to start being able to keep their sales
Their
reps?
sales reps.
What change did you make?
Well, one of the things that I did a couple of things. One
Hmm.
is I hired people that were way smarter than me. So one of the areas that we needed growth in was the tuxedo department.
Okay.
I'd never sold a tuxedo in my life. I didn't understand tuxedo rentals, and honestly, I didn't really care to learn.
Right.
So I went and found someone who had a pretty robust experience in that. I handed the department over to her. I said, "Tell me what you need and go do it." And she grew that department 276% in 1 year.
Wow.
Yeah. So
So
even
you
our
hired her as a sales rep, but to really head that department.
Yeah, I said, look, you
Okay.
had this department. And then on the bridal side, some of it was there just wasn't, again, there wasn't a system in place in terms of how do we hire. It was kind of
Hmm.
like if someone walks in and they're interested, we hire them. And I'm like, well, we need to hire people that have certain it requires a certain personality to do wedding gown sales because
Yep.
you're dealing with people in a high emotional time of their life and moment. You're dealing with family dynamics. So I needed people that had a level of maturity
Hmm.
and kind of interpersonal skills that they could handle maybe a cranky mother-in-law or somebody that has a maid of honor that has very strong opinions. But I would say the couple of things that I did was I brought a new perspective where I said, look, we are leading whole people. The previous manager was like, when you walk in here, I don't want to hear about your life. I don't want to care about your life. I don't want nothing. And I go, okay, I get that we have a job that needs to get done,
Right.
but we also are asking whole human beings to do that job. And
Mm.
so, how do we create a culture? And it started with me. I had to be the one that defined that culture. So there is time and if you need time off because you've got something going on in your personal life, let's have a conversation about it. I did a lot because I had a staff of over 30 women. We did a lot around conflict resolution. Here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to be catty. We're not going to talk behind people's backs. We're not going to, and really setting like, here are the expectations of what the job is
Hmm.
And we need to be able to do that. If you need accommodations around that, please come talk to me. But so some of it was a lot of the culture, right? And then the other part is we had some just really, really practical sales tips. Like we're not taking more than 4 gowns into the room at a time. And here's why. Like we're not gonna do this. And here the appointment's an hour and a half and teaching them how to run an appointment and how to do follow-up and how to so some of it was just practical stuff, but a lot of it was the culture. So how do we create an environment where people want to work, where we are empowering one another, where if one stylist didn't have an appointment and another one did, how are we supporting one another?
Hmm.
Pride in the building, pride in so a lot of it in that particular instance, and I think in general, your sales teams especially can get competitive and catty quickly. And so how
Yes.
do we build an environment where people really we understand we're on a team and there can be healthy
Collaborative.
competition. We had some healthy competition of who had
Hmm.
the highest closing ratio this week or who sold the most expensive dress. But that was at the benefit of the team, not, oh, and now we're separating this person out. And so, yeah.
How did you define what you were looking for in a sales rep specific to that industry?
Mm.
What did the criteria look like, and how did you arrive at that criteria?
Yeah. So I ended up hiring a lot of former wait staff, people who had been in a service industry because I knew that they could handle a lot of chaos.
Yes.
I knew that for them to be successful, they needed to be able to deal with difficult people and still have a kind demeanor. They weren't going to keep their job if they really royally angered somebody there or didn't handle that well. They were able, yeah, they were able to kind of manage multiple moving parts, right? Because we might have an appointment over here and then someone needs help over here. Or we've got, there's the job had different facets in it
Hmm.
outside of just selling dresses. There was some admin stuff and ordering. And so I knew people that had been in a service industry like waitstaff. I typically looked for that, but then I also looked for people that genuinely, I mean, this was a pretty extroverted job, right? Like
Hmm.
you had to maintain control of the appointment for an hour and a half,
Yeah.
and there were usually anywhere from 2 to 5 people with the bride. And so you needed to be enjoyable to talk to and be able
Hmm.
to start conversation. And, so I needed people with a certain personality too that weren't terribly intimidated by strangers. And then they had to be coachable because I was like, look, you're bringing a certain area to this, but you need, I'm going to teach you how to sell a wedding dress within how we want to do it because we have a level of service that we want to provide. And if you're not coachable or teachable, then that's going to be a problem, so that they were willing to learn.
Hardest job I ever
So
did.
hard. I know.
And one lesson that I learned that I even teach my clients to this day.
Hmm.
This woman was training me. I was struggling. I spilled beer on a client, and I just I, and when you start getting beaten down, you start letting the customers lead the way, which is a recipe for disaster.
Hmm.
She pulled me aside and she said, those customers expect you and need you to lead them
Hmm.
through this experience.
Hmm.
You've
Hmm.
got to be the leader.
Yes.
And those words have stuck to me to
Yep.
this day in any sales role I've been in as a
Yep.
founder and coaching
Hmm.
founders and
Hmm.
sales reps. I teach them they are paying you money. They
Hmm.
may push back on you,
Yep.
but they're paying for your expertise and you need to lead them.
Yep.
And that was from waiting tables.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what you found was sort of a gold mine for that.
Yeah.
Now, for what you were looking for in the with the bridal company, but my question for you is a lot of times when people are interviewing for jobs, they are their own PR agents and they will blow smoke in everything else. So when you're looking for a trait like, say, coachability,
Yeah.
how do you find out if that's really true
Yeah. I
in an
mean,
interview
sometimes,
process?
listen, the reality is I hired some really great people and I hired some people I had to fire.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, it's like you are making the best decision with the information you
Yeah.
have during an interview.
Yeah.
And I think the key thing though is to stay consistent
Mm.
from what you communicate to a potential employee. Like if I'm interviewing a sales rep, I am going to communicate to them what my expectations are, what the job entails, and then it is my job in that after I bring them on. You
Right.
remember this was the expectation. I used all my words. I told you beforehand.
Yeah.
This you agreed to this because then you have something to come back to and your integrity isn't the thing that is being challenged
Good.
as the leader in on that team or as the founder or whatever. Hey, this is and so we even coach our founders all the time. You before you do any hiring, you have to get really clear on your values and your principles as an organization because that will help you say no to a lot of things that you need to be saying no to and not get that scope creep or brand creep even where you start becoming all things to all people.
Yeah.
It'll help you hire because not everyone is a good fit for your company. Not every
Yeah.
investor is the right investor for your company. So, regardless, you've got to get really clear on your values. And then that allows you to make decisions out of your value base as opposed to reactively to like, hey, I'm having a reaction to this experience or this, encounter, this situation and I don't know why I'm responding this way. And then you make a rash decision as opposed to saying, hey, we set the expectation. The expectation came from the value. Like with the women at the stores that I led, I said, look, I have a high value of if you are in conflict with somebody, it is between you and that person. We are not going and telling everybody else. And I said, and you like, you're gonna have a problem with me if I hear about a conflict that you have decided to go talk to with everyone else without dealing with it one to one. I said, because 9 times out of 10, that conflict could be resolved like that. If you just go, it's probably a miscommunication. Somebody might just be having a bad day, but you got to go deal with that. And so it was a lot easier for me to handle conflict or challenges because we were all really clear on what the expectations were and the value that those expectations were birthed from.
Yeah. What you just said there is gold. The idea of defining of what that North Star looks like
Mm-hmm.
based on your values and then using that as a plumb line
Mm-hmm.
that you're able to point people to
Yeah.
as sort of being that arbiter or guide to say, hey, we're falling short of this. What can we do to
Right. Yeah.
bridge that gap? Having something objective like that is, I imagine, it's just crucial to get rid of chaos.
It is. I mean, I use that in parenting, it's like
Yes.
my value with my kids is I want to discover who they are alongside of them.
Hmm.
My value isn't that they walk out of my house with like a bow tie and so it that has meant letting my middle schooler go to school with one hot pink crock and one white crock on.
Yeah.
Because my value is allowing him to discover who he is alongside of him and
Yep.
his style and his not that he presents something to the world that I think he should.
Yeah.
So again it helps you say no. It reduces the decision fatigue exponentially because you're going, "Oh, I don't actually I can say no to that or I don't even have to care about that because it's not
Yeah.
within my value base. I don't have to worry about that." Hmm.
I know we're not going to spend the entire time talking about your experience at the bridal company,
Yeah,
but
you're good.
there's such fascinating stuff there.
Yeah.
I've got one more question, then we'll
Hmm.
we'll we'll move to how you got into your entrepreneurial career,
Yeah.
but what fascinates me in your story is you went from, okay, I had a few years gap in my resume because here I'm a full-time parent
Mm-hmm.
and now I need to find something. I find this. Now you found that and you brought sophisticated perspective and systems and everything else to change not only their processes, but their culture.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a point earlier in your career that instilled that into you, or
Mm-hmm.
was this a natural wiring that when you went in to a chaotic situation, you could
Mm-hmm.
feel it inside, and you had to just do
Something about
something
it.
to alleviate
Yeah.
that feeling?
Yeah.
Which was it, or a combination of both?
I think it's a little combination. I really have had the privilege of growing up with a family and in situations where I mean, this is stuff that we talked about around the dinner table.
Hmm.
My dad was really and continues to be really good about going, okay, what are the principles that guide our life? Who are we and who are we becoming? Because we have a say in that.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was not like I got a master class in leadership from my family and my watching my mom, my and a lot of the people that we were surrounded by. I
Hmm.
minored in leadership. So in college, I got to spend some really significant time with some incredible leaders that were doing
Yeah.
stuff all over the world and hearing them. So when my kind of approach was really moldable, I think, in the way I approached business or life. I got really lucky to be around some really incredible people that helped me think about it. This is again part of how I'm wired.
Yeah.
I gravitate towards this way of thinking and like just insatiably curious all the time. Like, why is that going? Why is that working well over here and why not there? And I'm a lifelong learner and I'm a
Yeah.
pretty big generalist in terms of like, I know a lot about a little thing. I'm late life diagnosed ADHD too, so it all made a lot of
Really?
sense about a couple years ago when I got
Yeah.
diagnosed. Like, oh, well, that makes sense. So I think it's a little bit of both and when I was in the stores, it kind of felt like, hey, this more so seems like like obvious to me that this is how we should do it, which I've learned is not so obvious to everyone. Just again, we all have different strengths. This just happens to be kind of again my strengths and my superpowers is seeing where the chaos is and then making it make sense. And then when I left the stores, I was working for a startup. And again, it was like, this is chaotic. Like, why are we doing it this way? And then when I went out on my own and I was mentoring founders, I just realized I was like, okay, I need to put my natural strengths and skills and abilities together with this. And again, I've learned more in the past couple of years than I ever thought possible. But yeah, I think some of it is, I just got really lucky with some of the people that I got to be around and
Yeah.
the way that my family approached things. And I've been an insatiable learner and, you know, kind of the things and then I think some of it's just how I'm wired. But
Yeah. No,
yeah, it's
I
like
can
a
completely see
spreadsheet.
that.
No, like do not put me in front of a spreadsheet. Please don't ask me to do math. I'm
Yeah.
begging you. Like,
Yeah.
so,
Praise God for Chat GPT that
exactly.
can
I'm like, yeah,
do
but
those
like an
formulas.
org chart, I'm there, like if
Yeah.
you need a process, if you need to fill out your CRM, I'm your girl.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, but please don't ask me to do the finances. Uh-huh.
So you were general manager of these bridal stores,
Hmm.
and you did that up until 2020, correct? And
Yep.
here you are, you've done that.
Yep.
You're you're a mother and you're thinking about going out on your own, which is scary for anybody at any stage of life. So walk me through that
That happened.
transition, that,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. So I left the stores. A friend of mine from college connected with me on LinkedIn. He had started a company and he said, "Hey, you want to come do sales for me?" I was like, I went and did that for 2 years. And then 2 years ago, end of August, September, he called me up and he goes, "I got to let you go. We're running out of money," which is very classic. I mean, that's not abnormal for the startup world. It was,
you find out at the last minute
and yeah,
type of
and
thing.
they're like, and it's like today.
Yeah. No severance. We just
Yeah,
ran
I
out of
mean, I
money.
got like a little bit, but it was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, like
What kind of sales was it and what kind of
it was
startup?
B2B. We were doing SaaS software sale,
Hmm.
B2B. And I was I learned a ton. I really, but I always joke, I say I learned everything you're not what you shouldn't do in a startup working for that one.
Like what?
But I mean, I think there's a lot of things, but the biggest thing is they launched the product really before doing a whole lot of market research. And so it took us about
Hmm.
2 years to even figure out who our real target market was, which, yeah.
Okay. That
So that
burns
would
through
say that,
cash fast.
yes, that burns through cash very fast and it makes it hard to sell because you're
Hmm.
like, I'm not even talking to the people that are actually want this or can benefit from it. So,
Yep.
but yeah, so Rusty, the CEO, called me and he goes, "I gotta let you go. I'm so sorry,
Hmm.
And I go, "Oh, okay." And I had ironically just closed a very big strategic partnership for the company. It was, there was going to be some referral stuff, but it was
Yeah.
a really good strategic. And he goes, "Well, we can't manage that because I was supposed to be the one managing it." And I was like, "No, I know." And so he goes, "Well, why don't you take them as a client and go out on your own?" He actually was the first. He goes, "Go." And he's like, "Amber, it's time. You got to bet on yourself."
That says a lot about
Well,
him to do
I'm
that.
a
That's great.
single mom to four boys. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't really have the financial flexibility to like totally bet on myself. But I knew I'd always had a dream of having my own company
Hmm.
and I had had some ideas. And so I called my dad and I called a couple of our other, people kind of just in my network that I really trusted in an advisory capacity. And I said, "Hey, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think? Is this a terrible idea?" And they all said, "We think it's a really good idea." Because at the end of the day, I was like, I think I can go kind of be a fractional uh, sales. I can teach founders how to do sales, right? Like
Hmm.
that's one thing I'm really good at is teaching people how to do sales, especially people who've never done it before and are really
Right.
green and scared about it.
Yeah.
I was like, I think I can do that. And I think I can go, if I get a couple of clients and I'll go do that and kind of be a fractional chief growth officer or sales associate or whatever.
Right.
He said, "No, we think that's a really good idea." And I said, "Okay." I go, "Well, do you guys have any suggestions on how to bridge the gap financially between now and when I
Start making money.
start making money?" I was like, I don't know. I was like, maybe there's a grant, maybe I don't know. And I couldn't get a small business loan because I didn't have any
Hmm.
I was in that weird gap where it was
Yep.
like, and one of them said, "Well, let me think about it." And he called me back the next day and he goes, "All right, five of us are going to give you some cash." And he goes, "We're going to pool some cash together and we'll bridge the gap for you." And he said, "Gentleman's handshake. If you start making money, you pay us back. And if not, we're okay to lose it, but we think you should bet on yourself." And so to
Oh,
have a few
that's awesome
people,
story.
yeah, say that to me, I was like, well, now I have to, it was like, and I was terrified. I mean, there have been plenty of nights
Hmm.
where I have been up till 3 or 4 in the morning, just so stressed, right?
Yeah.
Like and then, and being able to, again, I have the privilege of being surrounded by a community of people that there have been several times where I'm like, "Guys, I'm throwing in the towel." And they're like, "No, no, don't throw it in yet. You're really doing something. Like, what do you need to cover your bills for the next month?" And so I've been able to build this business over the past 2 years. And then a year ago, partnered with Sarah, who's my now business partner.
Yeah.
And we've been able to grow this thing truly because we have a community of people around us that have believed in us And I knew that at any given point, if they really felt like this wasn't going anywhere, they were people also who would say, hey, it's time to throw in the towel and go get a job.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they were going to be honest enough. But we really, I've had that conversation one time and it wasn't throwing the towel, it was, do you think you need to go get something part-time until this picks up? Like there was never a disbelief that what we were doing and building wasn't going to come to fruition. It was just a matter of how do we responsibly build it and pay our bills, make sure that there's food on the table for our kids and that there's a roof over our head. But that's another deep privilege that I have that a lot of founders don't have, that there's a group of people that are championing us and have been for 2 years and financially providing for us so that we could. And then, we'd close little deals here and there and celebrate major victories. And then the past couple of months, we've closed enough to be able to pay all our bills. And we're right at the edge of being able to pay everybody back.
Yeah.
And,
That's so
this
awesome.
year, everyone will get their money back and then
Yeah.
some. And so yeah.
I want to, in a second, I want to dig deeper in what you're building now, but I want to double click on this idea of the community that you've built around you, the
Mm,
support community, because as founders, that's probably the hardest thing, not just financially, but it's the emotional
mm,
aspect of you feel alone
yeah.
in the sense that you can't talk to your employees, you can't talk to certain people about things that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
You can you can talk to your spouse or partner, but
Hmm.
if they're not directly engaged in it, they don't really
Yeah.
understand what's going on. You know, they
Hmm.
don't feel that same
Yeah.
stress at 3 in the morning
Right.
that any of us would
Yeah.
feel. And
Yeah.
it's like those feelings don't necessarily go away no matter where you are in business.
Oh, yeah.
It's a just a bigger problem that we're having to solve.
Yep.
So there are things like that that go on. What did you can you pinpoint to anything of a habit or a system
Hmm.
that you employed that helped cultivate those relationships
Hmm.
around you so that you had champions
Hmm.
around you?
Mm. Oh, that's a great question. I think ironically, going through my divorce, 6 or 7 years ago, gosh,
Mhm.
7 years ago now, I had to make some big decisions quickly about the type of people that I was going to surround myself with. And you, when you go through something like that or a deep season of grief, it could be anything.
Mhm.
But I think when we have these deep seasons of grief, it does kind of weed out the people that are going to stick around and the people that aren't.
Yeah.
But I had to choose vulnerability. I
Mm.
had to choose to say to a few people in my life, I'm not okay. I'm not doing
Mm.
okay right now and I need help, or I need support. And so I think some of it was accidental in that like I wasn't thinking I was building these relationships so that when I wanted to launch my company, I had a community of people around me.
Yeah.
But we know actually the Surgeon General wrote something not too long ago where they've done studies and it's actually more dangerous to your health to be disconnected
Yes.
relationally than it is for you to smoke 5 packs of cigarettes a day. And so I think, again, just acknowledging like we're hardwired for connection
Mhm.
and relationships in our lives. And investing in those relationships has been the very best gift I've given myself in my life, period. And it has allowed me to go out on my own, but it has also allowed me to become a better mom. It has allowed me to know how to take care of myself better. It has allowed me to grow both professionally and in ways that I wouldn't have because there's a level of trust and connection and community that I'm going to invest in, whether I'm working a 9 to 5 or an entrepreneur. Like if this thing blows up, those relationships aren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just but there is a required intentionality of developing good friendships. And I would say, and I think COVID really revealed a lot of how disconnected we really are. And
Yeah.
that's just, I just refuse, again, that's one of my personal core values in my life. I refuse to be disconnected. Like I would rather choose to say the hard thing
Hmm.
or even let people know I'm really struggling in a certain area and give them the opportunity to be in it with me. And if they don't want to be in it with me, okay, but somebody does.
Somebody will.
That's the thing is that they do, they want to be in it and I want to be in it with them. So
Yeah.
just the intentionally cultivating those friendships and those relationships has been to my everything in my life.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's so powerful. I really appreciate you
Hmm.
sharing that experience.
Yeah.
Let's let's talk about now what what you're building at Redwood
Hmm.
Wise Ventures. And this is with your
Yeah.
partner, and your partner's name is
Sarah
Sarah.
Brown.
Okay.
Hmm.
Right. Tell me first how you guys got connected, and
Yeah.
then walk us through how you
Yeah.
what you're building
What
there
we're
and
building
who
now.
you're serving. Yeah.
Yeah. So we both had separate companies. So I had my little sales consulting, and she
Yeah.
was doing a marketing and business expansion. And we happened to both be mentors for the 757 collab which is incubator, accelerator, and angel investor organization here in Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay.
And so we both were mentors for that. We just were given time and, working with founders. We met at one of those events a year ago,
Yeah.
had a phenomenal, and actually it was funny because several of the companies that we were mentoring, we happened to be mentoring a couple of the same companies. And both of those founders were like, you need to talk to Sarah, you need to talk to Amber. Like you guys are saying a lot of the same things. And
Yeah.
we went and grabbed a cup of coffee and started chatting. And I was like, I'm having the same four conversations with founders over and again.
Yeah.
She's, oh my gosh, me too. And I said, hey, I was thinking about just throwing together kind of because I can only give so much time for free, these like go to market, I don't know, kind of just these strategy sessions or whatever. And
Yeah.
she's like, oh, that's great. I said, do you want to do that together? And we were just going to throw a collaborative offering together, not thinking it was not on either of our radar to start another company.
Yeah.
We were both still treading water trying to make ours go.
Yeah.
And we did that. And I mean, immediately people were like, oh my gosh, yes, we need this, we need this. And so we were like, okay, hold on. This was last fall. We're like, maybe we uncovered something. So
Yeah.
we did our own market research. We started talking to a bunch of different investors, incubator and accelerator leaders, directors. We went to Hunter, who is the executive or the director for the incubator here, the 75 Startup Studios, and we said, "Hey, can we test this out and do a full day go-to-market workshop?" And he goes, "Yeah, sure, great." So we're like, "Okay." So we did. We had 25 companies show up
Wow.
for a full day, 6 hour, and they stayed. They like stayed for all 7 hours of this thing.
That's
And by the time they left, they had, the beginning packet of their go-to-market strategy. We took them through, the key components. And so we had several people hire us from there. And we said, okay, well, we need to get some reps in, make sure that what we're really doing is working. But the big thing for us that we realized really quickly was, and why we decided to incorporate and create Redwood Rise was it's really just unacceptable to us that 9 out of 10 startups fail
yeah.
and 75% of funded startups fail. And only 2% of venture capital dollars go to women and founders of color. And it's
Hmm.
just absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And we are both absolutely convinced that the best innovation this world will ever see is currently locked in lack of opportunity.
Yeah.
And so we said, all right, we are embedded in these innovative ecosystems, but there has not been a whole lot of innovation in the support system around it. So how do we change that?
Yeah.
Because the reality is these statistics are going to stay the same unless something changes. And the gaps that we continually see are you have founders that have a phenomenal idea.
Hmm.
They don't know how to build a business around it.
Right.
They don't know how to really build the infrastructure of the business. And then oftentimes they're not salespeople. They don't have a sales background. And the reality is, if you don't sell enough fast enough, you don't have a business.
Yeah.
And so we've developed a process and then are currently launching a pilot program with hopefully 8 different. We've got 2 or 3 that are just about yes. We're finalizing structure, but we're looking for several other, angel funds or VC funds that we are going to partner with.
Yeah.
We've got a really interesting opportunity where we can essentially backstop or insure their investments. So, and then we will work with their portfolio companies to make sure that the infrastructure is there. The way I describe it is we take the duct tape off and
Yeah.
we put bolts in. We
Nice.
bolt this plane together so that it actually is sustainable. And then we have some opportunities within the kind of ensuring that so it de-risks it on the investor side.
Yeah.
It helps their portfolio companies really build a scalable business and a viable business. And then once we get them to certain levels, we're able to fund them additionally. So there's a lot of creativity still going into that. We're still figuring out some of it, but the response has been overwhelmingly positive because I think everybody is feeling, especially again, post-COVID investors are investing differently.
Yep.
They're not investing as much. They're, hesitant to.
Post ZERP,
And
I imagine too, with the interest rates.
yeah.
Yeah.
So how do we de-risk that and give them a little bit more of a safety net to be able
Mhm.
to do that and then expand where those dollars are going? That it's not just that it does actually make it to female founders, founders of
Mhm.
color, people that are
Mhm.
outside of your traditional white man.
Yeah.
No offense.
No, yeah, absolutely
But
though.
yeah.
I
So,
love the fact that you have that core vision of what you're
mhm,
trying to do and how that motivates you. The
mhm,
Something I'm curious about that I think our audience would gain a lot from is
mhm,
understanding the different roles of what Sarah brings to the table, what you bring to the
mhm.
table when you're talking about a go-to-market strategy.
Yeah.
So often, founders, especially if they have zero marketing or sales experience,
Hmm.
see it as the same thing.
Yes.
And they will overemphasize one or the other and so forth.
Right.
So, if you can walk me through what that looks like in a go to market
Yeah.
strategy.
So if you came to one of our workshops or worked with us, we took you through our sessions.
Hmm.
We're going to hit several big buckets. The first one is your brand, and that is
Hmm.
not your logo and your colors. Your brand is how people experience your organization and really what it is that you do, not how it works, what you do. What is your client experiencing if they engage with you?
Hmm.
What's the messaging? How we're communicating it?
Yeah.
So we do a lot on brand messaging. Then we look at your target market. Who is going to benefit and who is going to give you money for this
Yeah.
product or service? So, and we really dial that in. We work really hard with founders to help them niche down. And we always have to tell them this is not pigeonholing yourself. Netflix started by just mailing DVDs, and now they've
Hmm.
totally transformed the way that we watch TV. Amazon started by just selling books, and now
Hmm.
we've got, like it's you need to pick an area where you can get wins to prove your concept, to build revenue, and then you can grow from that and reinvest into other parts of your company. So who's your
We've
target
called that
market?
a beachhead market. What's that?
Yes.
Where
Yeah.
you're going to
Yep.
make your invasion. Okay.
Yep. exactly. Then we look at your pricing strategy
Hmm.
and your sales operations. So, one of the key things that we do, we take all of our founders through an exercise where we reverse engineer their numbers. So, what's your revenue goal? How many deals does that? So, if you've got $1 million revenue goal and you need to sell, and your average deal price is $100,000, you need to sell 10 of those a year. Okay,
Hmm.
well, how do we close 10 a year?
Yeah.
How many people, and we boil that all the way down. By the end of that exercise, we tell them how many hours a month it's going to take them and how many new leads they need to get. And then we also show them where those leads need to come from. So, how many do you have the manpower to
Hmm.
drive? Like to sell 10, to close 10 deals, you may need to talk or reach 5,000 companies. How do you reach 5,000 companies? Okay,
Can,
so
can I hit the pause button real quick just
mhm.
on that point for clarification? So, what if the company is so you're having them reverse engineer their numbers, but really they're trying to figure out what that per
Mhm.
unit thing actually looks like. Like they're
Yeah,
dealing with some sort of complexity where they haven't quite found that product market fit. And so when you have that sort of amoeba
yeah,
that's,
yep,
amorphous, you don't,
yep,
without that clarity, how then,
yeah.
uh, with folks like that, how do you walk them through to gain
Creation,
that
yeah,
clarity to,
yep. When they're still not certain about what their price is that what you're
or what
asking?
they're not even certain about what their offering is. They're trying to figure
Yeah.
out what that is, or is that solved when you have done the messaging part? Like you got the product message fit, which
Hmm.
then gives you clarity for the product market fit. So walk me through how that's achieved so then you're
Yep.
able to run those numbers.
Yep. So we always, one of the requirements we have is our clients have to have done a significant amount of market research, meaning they need to have a sense. And if they haven't, we'll even say, go, you need to go do 10 more
There you
interviews.
go.
You need to go do 20 more interviews and go figure out, because I mean there have been several companies that I've sat down and I've looked at them and I go, this is not a good idea.
Hmm.
I see what you're trying to do, but you're still just trying to solve a problem for yourself. I'm not sure there is a market big enough or there are enough people that will pay you for this solution.
Yep.
And so encouraging them to go, okay, there might be a solution in here, but I am certain it is not this particular thing, and
Yep.
so, and we always encourage it because even one of our clients, we made them go do additional market research and they came back and they were like, oh, we do have a B2B market. And I go, I know, I was trying to tell you that, but like they needed to go do the research and understand. So some of it is one of one of the first things we tell people, because we have our RISE framework, is respect the distance. This is going to take you some time. You've got to respect the distance. It takes time and there's pivoting and there are a lot of questions that you've got to ask. And, but if you haven't done any market research and you go build a software platform or an app without doing any market research, you've just wasted $150,000 because you've built something that's solving a problem for yourself. But
Yeah.
again, are you solving a big enough problem for enough people that are willing to pay you for the solution?
And I want to double click on that real quick because what what I have seen in the market in a lot of ways is that companies will hire sales prematurely because they have not found that
Mhm.
product market fit. They may have, like you said, a solution that they believe in. They've invested in this money to build it, and then they hire a sales rep to go, all right, you take this out and you sell it. And then
Mhm.
that rep is set up to fail.
Oh, yeah. I've
So
been that
what,
rep. I've
yeah.
been that rep.
So you're
Yeah.
you're 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 speaking right on because what you're doing is they're coming to you, and if they don't have it, you're like, look, I can help you accelerate your sales, but you got to have something that sells in the non-scalable way,
Yeah.
meaning per make sure you have something here, your
Yeah.
messaging matches, your product matches, customers are willing to buy, and
Hmm.
then I can give you this engine
Yep.
that will,
Yep.
take you where you want to be.
Yep.
Am I
Yeah.
hearing everything correctly there?
Yes. Yeah. Because people, what honestly, half one of the ways we get most of our clients, at least half, is they come to Sarah and they go, I need marketing. We need
Yeah.
marketing. And she'll ask them two questions and she goes, you're not even a look. She goes, you can do marketing and you can go ahead and wait $20,000 right now if you want to. She goes, it's not going to
Yeah.
work. She was at the marketing,
Uh,
the last thing. I mean, it is the last piece of the puzzle because if you don't know who you are, if you don't know who you're talking to, if you don't know how many people you need to reach to be able to close certain number of deals, to be able to meet your goals, marketing is a waste of money. And the other thing that we tell our
yeah.
founders too is what if you go viral? What if you do a marketing campaign and it works? Are you set up in a way to deliver
Yeah.
in a timely manner
Gosh.
your product or service? And 10 out of 10 times they go, I didn't even think about that.
Oh my gosh.
What if it
Yeah.
does? Because I've had that. I mean, we saw this on TikTok Shop. People were going viral and it would take months for them to deliver their product because they didn't expect 400,000 people to order their soap. And now, and here's the deal, they're not going to maintain that level of sales because people aren't going to buy from them again because they couldn't deliver the first time around.
You're you're hitting the right tones
Yeah.
that I've experienced,
Yeah.
and because that's a huge mistake.
Mhm.
I when I ran my company as a agency, I'd be hired by these marketing directors. I worked with one technology company 10 years ago that they churned through six marketing directors in a 12-month period, and it was largely because they were set up to fail. I mean,
Yes.
there was no communication between marketing and sales. The
Right.
messaging is completely off. I'm
Yep.
trying to drive those conversations because I'm trying to get close to the customer to be able to have our people
Yep.
write
Yep.
directly towards those.
Yep.
And I got to the point, there's no way this can work. I
Right.
was
Yeah.
you,
Well, and
you know, and
yeah.
so it's that putting the marketing sales has to be nailed down, and then you throw marketing as just that jet fuel that you
Yep.
need,
Yep.
and people get it reversed and they
Yep.
drown in that jet fuel.
Yep. Yep. Well, and Sarah always says too, she goes, look, I can't do my part until Amber does her part. I'll build out their sales
I
operations.
I
And she
love
goes,
that.
now I know exactly where we need to plug and play the marketing. She said, look, your salespeople are your frontline investigators.
Yes.
They are the ones that are going to tell you because, and I'll even say when I was working for the startup, there were, I became very close with our marketing director because I go to her, I go, Claire, our website isn't saying this, but here's a phrase that I've used now. I've tested it out in like 5 sales calls, and this is the phrase that people are connecting with. And she's like,
Yeah.
great. So it's like you have this natural built in to your business, if you do it correctly, continued search, brand deepening, target market confirming
Yeah.
people. If and it's like, look, I'll go out and test 10 different ways of saying this, and I'm going to come back and tell you the ones that work. And then your marketing person pops that in to whatever they're developing. And guess what? It works because I've just tested it out on,
Yeah.
50 sales calls. And I'm like, this is one works, this way that I'm saying it works.
Let me reinforce that real quick with our
Mhm.
audience. If you all get nothing else out of this conversation, get what Amber was just talking about, the idea of there being a sequence or a priority of begin with sales to establish what's working and then
Mhm,
add that marketing component,
mhm,
but also be thinking about on a continuous basis, how is marketing and sales collaborating
mhm.
and listening to each other
Yeah.
and building that message so that marketing can take what sales has learned. It's
Mhm,
almost like sales could be doing like in service, hey,
mhm,
here's what we're hearing
mhm,
in the field and on the ground that we found resonates. How can you put this into our
mhm.
website? How can we craft social media content around this and so forth?
Mhm.
Look for ways that you can collaborate
Yes.
those roles within your organization, and that will be the killer app that will drive your sales.
Yeah. Well, and I think, tell me if this is what I've experienced too. People want to jump to marketing because they want to bypass having to make a sales call
Yes, that
because
is 1000%.
it's hard.
It,
Sales
it,
calls are hard. I've been in sales for over 20 years and I still at times have to psych myself up to make a cold call or to make that daggum sales follow-up, do the sales process. It's hard.
yes,
It can be intimidating. Marketing does not bypass your sales, it supports your sales.
yes,
And if you are using marketing so that you don't have, I mean, we tell founders all the time, they go, now what do I do? And I go, unfortunately, you got to pick up the damn phone. I don't know what else to tell you, bud. You got to make the call. And we'll boil it down. I'll say you need to talk to 10 new people today to close one deal this month, which means you need to talk to 40 new people a month to close one deal this month. You're going to hear a lot of no's. Get really comfortable with that. It's not
yeah,
personal. I promise you. But when you get that one, but like those are the numbers, but it's like you got it. You're going to have to go do sales. And if
yeah.
you really cannot bring yourself to make those phone calls, then you need to find someone or hire someone or bring a co-founder onto your team that can make those calls because that you will never be able to bypass that through a really great marketing effort. You just can't.
Truer words have never been spoken on that. And that has been my experience of
Hmm.
going, it doesn't matter how much money you throw into marketing, it
Yeah.
will not make the sales for you. And it won't make the leads for you really any warmer because a lot of times you're not getting the qualified leads that
Right.
you need because you're not there talking to the customers to figure out what resonates with them.
Right.
So that is the importance of sales systems. And wanted to ask you on that, it is uncomfortable for a lot of us to do calls. One of the things that I've done as an introvert is I'll do some cold calls. I'll do a lot of networking events, which get me out there and I generate leads that way. I
Mhm.
do, email. Connecting on LinkedIn has been a powerful tool for me.
Hmm.
As long as you're not selling on, when you're doing DMs, a lot of
Yeah.
times you're attracting people to you.
Yeah.
It's what I call open mic marketing.
Hmm. Hmm.
You're able to establish trust by putting your expertise out there.
Yeah.
But what are some things that you have found worked effective, whether it's with you or with some of the clients that you work with that may
Yeah.
be call reluctant
Yeah.
to get them to break out of that and make
Yeah.
the calls that they need to do?
Yeah. So there have been a couple of things. One is I always have our clients, I go, your homework for this week is to go home and
Yeah.
I'm not making you make a phone call yet. I said, write a list,
Yeah.
and it should be a really long list of anybody that you have in your life that you feel comfortable enough saying, hey, Susie, I'm working on this. Is there anybody in your sphere that you think might benefit from what I'm doing?
Yeah.
And would you be willing to make that introduction? Because that warm introduction is way easier
Yes.
to, it's not a quote, you're not, and more often than not, people, I mean, I've gotten on the phone with some people. I had no business, like they had no business taking my call, but they
Mhm.
did because of the relationship,
Yeah.
because of the person that introduced me to them. So there's that. So that we talk about leveraging your network, and your network is everybody you know. It's the parent you stand next to on the side of the ball field. It is the barista. It is, maybe an old coworker. It is,
Mhm.
there should be 50, if you can get 25 to 50 people written down on a list that you feel comfortable just saying, hey, here's what, and you can even email, here's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Do you have anybody that you think might be interested and would you be willing to make an introduction? I have landed some of my biggest deals that way. We are where we are, honestly, in our company because of that. I forget we have a website. Like I just,
Yeah.
we leverage our network all the time, all the
Uh-huh.
time, all the time. That's one. The other thing is, I think one of the biggest fears people have about sales is they have it in their head that you have to be like a used car salesman.
Yeah.
They don't understand that really the best salespeople are people who genuinely care.
Yeah.
They genuinely believe that what their solution or what they're bringing to the table is something that it maybe not everyone needs, but the people that need it really do need it and can benefit from it. So I'm
Yeah.
not even selling, right? I'm saying, look, I really want to serve you and help you. And
Well,
having that mind shift, there's a great program with my friend Brian Fretwell with Finding Good. If you go to
mm,
findinggood.com, he has
awesome.
$750. It's dirt cheap for sales training.
Yeah.
And he has a sales training for people and it's based on the neuroscience of connection.
Mm.
So it's that relational, deep relational stuff. So that I did that. I would say everyone should do that that wants to be in sales.
Yeah.
There's so many sales programs and they're thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And in my experience, you can get some nuggets from them. But what I find that the thing that is causing the reluctance is people don't want to come across as salesy.
Yeah.
So don't build the relationships. And then you also have to have if you don't have enough confidence in what you're selling, maybe you shouldn't be selling that, Like you should really believe in the product or service you're selling that it does what it says it can do and that it will benefit the client in their use. That makes it a lot easier too.
I didn't want to interrupt you if you had more
No,
on that because it's
that's
right.
it. Those
Because
are kind of my two big things. Yeah.
yeah, that's gold. On your first point there, one of the things I've done in that same vein is I call a feedback and advice
hmm
meeting.
hmm
So I'll send an email, schedule it with people who are in my network,
hmm
and it'll be like take them to lunch or coffee or whatever, or it may be a phone call or a Zoom.
Yeah.
And in that, I would talk about, okay, here's what we're thinking about doing. I'm trying to sanity check,
Yeah. Yeah.
what are our assumptions?
Yep.
Who do you think might benefit from this? And it just opens up doors.
It
So
does.
right
Yeah.
there, Amber, as you were talking about, you're not being salesy. You're asking for advice, and people, because I'm a sucker for it too. People ask to meet, and I'm like, yeah, happy to
Yeah.
give advice. I mean, you're
Yeah.
raising my status, right?
Right,
So
right, right.
you're you're
Yeah.
raising their status, which is fantastic. Your
hmm
second point made me chuckle because I used to sell used cars. I mean, I learned sales as a commercial truck sales rep, but
Yeah.
one of the things I that I've since learned, and I did it intuitively, but now I've codified this
hmm
philosophy so I wouldn't feel like a used car salesman,
Yeah.
is I go, sales is not about convincing people to buy.
Right.
It's about finding or creating alignment between the customer's problem and
Yeah.
your solution.
Yep.
The
Absolutely.
moment I made that shift and really codified it,
hmm
it got rid of the fear, the reluctance,
Yeah.
because I didn't feel like I was trying to shove something down. If
Yeah.
if there was a fit, great. If not, that's great too. And
Yep.
so what that allows you to do is to detach from the
Yep.
outcome.
Yes.
And when
That's
you
huge.
detach, it
Yes.
forces you to prospect more,
Yes.
right? Because
Yep.
you're like, okay, I need more touches
Right.
to find alignment.
Right.
And we're shopping each other.
Yes. Yep.
So
Yeah.
you
No,
brought
that's
up some great points.
huge. The detachment part is huge, especially for early stage founders when you
Mhm.
are have to when you're wearing all the hats and this thing is your baby. I mean, you have,
Yeah.
nurtured it, birthed it, you're
Mhm.
trying, and it's like, and it's so personal. We talk
Mhm.
all the time. We're like, you have to find a way to separate your personal worth from your professional outcomes.
Wow.
You are worthy as a human being because you exist, because
Right.
you are here. Not everyone's going to like your product or service or even need it, but that does not diminish your value because really at the end of the day, I mean, these challenges you experience as a founder are profoundly personal. You have to come face to face with your
Yes, you do.
relationship with money. You have to come face to face with the loneliness of leadership. And I mean, all of my friends outside of my co-founder, they all have 9 to 5 jobs and they get a good paycheck, and it's like
Mhm.
they don't understand the stress because they're like, no, we're going to be on your yacht one day. It'll be great. And I'm like, yeah, but
Yeah.
I can't afford groceries today. Like I need to get the dog food like today,
Yeah.
So it's, there's that sense of like it is probably the thing that will grow you, change you, challenge you and grow you up the most. But
Mhm.
you've got to be able to go, okay, this is a thing I'm building. This isn't, again, like if it totally flops, I have learned a ton and that doesn't diminish my value as a human being. Like that
Exactly.
is like, I mean, that took me like 10 years of therapy to get,
Yeah.
So, but that is the challenge. And I think so often people in sales, when you're not wired for that, like, relationship networking, I'm a little bit, again, like it's not that hard for me to talk to a stranger, but sales is very challenging, even though
Hmm.
I can talk to anybody about anything, because I've had to learn to separate, like if they don't feel or see the need or align with what we're doing, that's okay. Like, but that's
Exactly
taken
right.
me a long time to get to that point of where I can mentally go, okay, and especially when you are trying to pay the bills and you're like, every person I talk to should hopefully help me pay the next, like when the finances are really
Yeah.
tied to yeah, I mean, it's hard.
Can you recall where you crossed the chasm
Mm.
on that aspect of attachment to detachment? Was there a point that you realized?
Um, that's a good question. I think I go in cycles.
Hmm.
I don't know that every new thing that I do, I kind of have to redetach from it.
Yeah,
It took me about 20 minutes, I think, when I was doing the stores, because it was like, look, at some point, I either have the dress you want or I don't. Like that's,
exactly. Yeah.
if I'm doing the thing in the entrepreneur journey of it, having a co-founder has been, I think, the biggest game changer for me
Hmm.
because there's someone who gets it and we consistently are able to say to one another, like, I ain't got it today. Or like, and the other one can go, all right, I'll believe for the team today,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
hey, remember, you need to go rest, or, we've got this. We're doing really well, kind of that consistent encouragement. But I think at the end of the day, there's a level of audacity and delusion that you have to have as a founder, that says, no, because you're seeing something and creating something that is not there yet.
Yeah.
And so convincing people that it's worthwhile can be really challenging. But at the end of the day, it's like, I really genuinely believe what we're doing is potentially world changing work.
Yeah.
The way that we are able to unlock opportunity and create spaces of growth and innovation that have currently been untapped. That has to stay at the forefront of my mind.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I like on my hard days, it's like, nope, that's my North Star. And even for the founders that we work with, I'm like, do you still believe in what you're doing? Yeah. Okay, well then who cares what that guy said?
Yeah.
Like I think that's part of it is you just have to, okay, what's my North Star? Do I really believe that? All right, I'm going to shake off that bad call. I'm going to pick up the
There you
next one,
go.
do it again, because there's a win right around the corner.
Yeah. So true.
My kids, all my boys have played baseball. And I remember a couple years ago, I asked them why they loved the sport so much. And my oldest, he was about 15 at the time, he goes, game of failure. And I go, that's why you like it? And he goes, look, if you're batting 300, that means you're failing 7 out of 10 times you're getting up to
Yeah.
bat. And he goes, but batting 300 is really good. And he was like, so I was sitting at dinner talking to all four of them. And that has been something that analogy continues to stick with me, that my sweet kids were like, we love the challenge of like the hardest thing to do in sports is hit a baseball.
Yeah.
And we are up there every time giving it a go because the failures are stinky, but like when you hit that one and you get that win, that's a sweet victory. So I think that's a lot of the part that I feel with sales is like you hear more no's than you hear yeses. Man, those yeses are really sweet.
It, baseball is a beautiful metaphor, and that's really deep coming from your boys
I
because
know.
it it is a game of failure,
Hmm.
but it's also a game of the law of averages,
Hmm.
right? Over a
Hmm.
season, you could be going through especially in the major leagues, you can be going through a slump, but over time you work through the slumps. You have these ebbs and flows of how
Yep.
you perform, and that is sales to the T.
To the T. Yeah.
And if you learn to accept that, then
Mhm.
if you're 3 out of 10, you're an all-star,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you start when you start seeing it in that way, I think that's a powerful metaphor. Appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Anything that we haven't talked about today that you think would be really important for our audience of founders and sales leaders to be thinking about?
I don't know. I feel like we've covered a lot. I will just say what I always tell our founders at the end of a workshop or at the
Yeah.
end of anything, like keep going. The world desperately needs your voice and your innovation. We are not done and it is needed. Your voice is important. And so keep going. I know it's hard. I know you feel every emotion by 9 a.m. and then you do it all over again by noon.
Yeah.
But it is worth it. Thomas Edison, when he finally figured out the light bulb, he had failed over 200 times. And he goes, I didn't fail. I just learned 200 ways not to make a light bulb.
Yeah.
And I love that. So just keep going, one foot in front of the other. You have not worked this hard for this long for nothing to come of it,
Yeah.
is always the encouragement I give founders. So
Absolutely. I appreciate what you're doing in the
yeah,
marketplace for you to, you look at the 9 out of 10 of the startups that fail. And if one, two, three, four, or whatever number fewer fail because of what you're doing, that's a huge win. So I appreciate what you're doing there. And thank you so much for
thank you.
joining us on the podcast today.
It was a blast. Thank you so much, Sean. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Amber.